Hey, so I'm back. Been off for a couple of weeks moving house, and amazingly in this day and age it still takes 2 weeks to get your broadband turned on. So just before we get to the comparison, I just wanted to mention quickly that I was on a ride at the weekend. We did 200 miles, 100 on the Saturday, 100 on the Sunday, out to Cumbria. It rained for pretty much the whole weekend. The guy I was riding with was on one of these, in fact this exact bike, the S-Works Roubaix. Now what was interesting was obviously he had discs, I had a rim brake bike running carbon wheels, and there was a pretty big difference when it came to going downhill in the wet. He obviously had a lot more confidence on his bike with mostly with the discs, but also he had his little bit of suspension, and yeah, he was just off. I couldn't keep up with him. My carbon rims, the braking was dreadful. I felt not secure at all, going down 20% steep hills. So that wasn't fun, but there was a downside that showed itself with the discs, and anybody who rides a mountain bike will know exactly what that is, in that if you ride through a puddle or anything like that that sprays muck up into the caliper and onto the rotor, you then have a grinding noise that goes on for 10 minutes after until you get onto a dry piece of road and it goes away. And it's very annoying and very against the whole road bike thing of, you know, a nice quiet bike. And then when he did use his brakes with that grinding noise going on, he'd put the brakes on and then they'd start playing a tune. It was quite funny. They made all sorts of weird noises. Better performance, but the noise they make is a downside. So there we go. I thought I'd just mention that about discs. Anyway, we're back, and today I'm going to look at the Pinarello K10S versus the F10. The first thing to note here is how unbelievably difficult it was to find a decent picture of it. This is the one off the website. As you can see, the quality is utterly diabolical. Don't know why that is. Anyhow, this is basically a shout out to Daniel, who sent me a message saying, "Hi, my dad's kind of an older rider and he's looking into getting a Pinarello K10S, and he was wondering if you could do a comparison of the frame geometry between the K10S and the F10. He said he tried the F10 and didn't like it and wondered how different the K10S was. Thanks." Well, thank you, Daniel. And first thing I just want to mention, I know some dudes in their 60s who are quite happy riding bikes like the F10 or the Trek Madone. They're still super fast, can ride it all day. Whereas I know some 20-year-old dudes who are so unflexible and not used to riding their bikes that they really struggle on the more racy bikes. So the bottom line is, it's not really how old you are, it's more to do with what sort of riding you want to do, how fit you are and how flexible you are. So don't just think as if, you know, you're old that you can't ride a decent bike, because that's not true. Okay, so like I say, I found it very difficult to find any decent pictures that I could use for this comparison. Pinarello have opted for the sort of 3/4 view of the bikes as their main photos, which are kind of useless to me in my videos because they don't line up. So the first thing to note about the K10S, there's quite a lot of fandangle stuff in it, and at the top of that list is this little thing here that's inserted between the seat tube and the seat stays. So yep, that's right, you've got suspension on this bike. Well, call it suspension, but it's 1 centimetre of travel. So the first question is, do you need suspension on your road bike? Have you ever thought to yourself, "Ooh, I really need some extra stuff on my road bike to give me suspension"? Not only that, it's obviously electronic, so it's got a battery, so it'll need charging. I'm going to hold judgment for this second, but that is basically what it is. So I had a problem. I didn't have a decent picture to compare against the F10. So I trawled and trawled across the internet, and the best I could come up with, the best quality I could come up with, was on the Sigma website where they sell the Pinarellos, where I could find this picture, and with a bit of Photoshop I managed to make it look like a semi-decent picture of the bike. Currently on the Sigma website, just the frame set comes in at £6,700, so weight wise I couldn't tell you what the bike will come in at, because obviously you've got to put your bits on it. That seems hugely expensive to me, but hey ho. The K10S is a disc bike, as you can see, so I thought we better compare it against the Dogma F10 disc. And this again, frame set only, £4,700, so cheaper than the suspension version. So let's have a look between the two. And looking at that, it's no surprise that the F10 is obviously a more compact bike, bringing you down a bit at the front, whereas the K10S, a little bit longer, a little bit taller. Let's just zoom in. Actually looks like the K10 is a bit neater around there. I've never liked the fact that there's this gap on the F10. And obviously a bit different with respect to this area here, what with our little suspension unit in there. The other thing to note is the shape of the seat tube is obviously designed to give it a bit of flex, whereas the F10, it's more about the aerodynamics and keeping it stiff. So there we go, not too many surprises there, I don't think. Race bike, endurance, sportif, maybe even Paris-Roubaix cobble type bike. Obviously is the F10 with the discs. They obviously make one without discs. In fact, I found a site where you could buy this complete bike for $9,250. So super top end of the range. Price wise, this is obviously Dura-Ace Di2. This is actually the version from 2017. Again, I found it very difficult to find the 2018 in a decent picture. This is the 2018 version, and if I zoom in on that, it's just dreadful quality. But I thought what we'd do while we were here is compare against the K10 without the suspension, and this is obviously the rim brake version, and just compare that against the F10 rim brake version. Similar story. Obviously higher at the front and different at the back, but much similar than the suspension version. Quite different shapes on the seat stays there. Pinarello have always had these interesting shapes. I find them a bit fancy-dancy, but obviously people love them. So let's just compare the K10 against the K10S disc. And very similar geometry, and in fact, according to the website, they have the same wheelbase, and everything else looks pretty similar too. Obviously different around the back there where the suspension is. So in conclusion, what can I say? Personally, I definitely wouldn't personally buy the K10S with the fancy-dancy suspension in it, because as the old saying goes, you can tell who the pioneers are by the arrows in their back and their face in the mud. So I think it will come and go. I have a friend who bought the Lapierre iShock mountain bike, where basically electronically controls the rear suspension being turned on and off depending supposedly on the terrain, and he loved the bike, but it broke down, it went in the shop under warranty, it was out of action for months while they tried to get the parts sent over from Lapierre. Maybe Pinarello are much better at that sort of thing. I couldn't comment on that. It just seems like added complication to me, and manufacturers wanting to add fancy stuff to try and charge more money. So nope, I'd definitely, if I was going to buy one of the K bikes, go for just the normal K10, although I'd probably want to go with a disc version. Personally, I think you can get enough compliance from seat posts. Bike Radar have done quite a good article looking at 5 seat posts that offer quite good comfort, and I quite like this one here with the split leaf design. I think that one won actually. So there you have it, that's my opinion. Just while we're on the Pinarellos, I will leave you with this picture of the 2018 Team Wiggins F10. That's a pretty cool looking bike, isn't it? I'm not sure how often we'll see it coming out with the 808s on. Pretty tasty looking bike, I've got to admit it. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, keep sending your ideas in for the bikes that you'd like to see compared, and subscribe to my channel.